Thank you very much. It's a little embarrassing and upsetting that I have a career. I talk about things like trust and cooperation and like treating people like human beings and stuff that there should be no demand for. And yet there's a demand for this message, and that's sad to me. And what is particularly sad to me is how very often when I get to travel around and speak about these things, that people view them as new ideas or good ideas, as if they haven't existed for very long. But this idea of treating people well and this concept of leadership, I'm starting to realize more and more as I've been doing this for a few years, may be the root of many of the problems that we have today. You know, leadership is often treated as a nice thing or something to think about afterwards. But again, the more I read the news and the more I get to sort of talk to people who are supposed to be leading, I think it's a bigger issue. For example, we look at the dysfunction in the VA. That, by the way, is a breakdown of leadership. That's all that is. If there was functional leadership, you would have had the people inside the organization taking responsibility for the organization. We look at the dysfunction in Congress. That is nothing short of a complete lack of leadership. That's all it is. I used to believe that Congress was the root of all of the ills today. I now do not believe that. I believe that Congress is a reflection of us. We are the ones who aren't listening to each other. We are the ones that fight with each other. We are the ones that have picked a side and refuse to talk to or vilify the other one. It is us. And we have a Congress that simply represents us. And I think there's a little bit of self-reflection that needs to happen. We look at some of the corporate excesses and the things that really upset us. These are nothing short of failures of leadership once again. We don't actually mind that good leaders get paid a lot of money. It actually doesn't bother us. What we mind is when leaders violate the very definition of what it means to be a leader. As a little aside, what is the definition of a leader? It's a historical definition. It's not some highfalutin opinion. We are social animals. The reason we are successful as a species is because we are social. We're not the strongest, we're not the fastest. We weren't the only hominid species upon this earth when we showed up 50,000 years ago. We were the one that survived, and we were the one that thrived. And we did so because we worked together. By ourselves, we're not very good. In groups, we are remarkable. And we are remarkable when we live and work with people we trust. There are simple and inherent benefits to being amongst people around whom we feel safe, around whom we trust. It means we can fall asleep at night and trust that someone else will watch for danger. If we don't trust the people with whom we live or with whom we work, we can't fall asleep at night. It's not a good system. And so for about 40,000 of the 50,000 years that we've been on this planet, we lived in populations that never got bigger than about 150 people. It's only the past 10,000 years with farming that our populations had the resources to explode. And so in these times, there was a very practical issue. That practical issue was food. And we were all pretty hungry at these resource-constrained times. And when somebody brought food back to the tribe, 150 of us, up to 150 of us, if you were lucky enough to be built like a football player, you could rush in and push everybody else out the way and get the food you wanted. And if you're the artist of the family, you get an elbow in the face. This is not a very good system, because the odds that I will alert someone to danger who punched me in the face this afternoon are not very high. And so we evolved into hierarchical animals. We are constantly judging and assessing each other, who's alpha, who's beta. It's a relative scale, it's not an absolute scale. If you've ever had the experience where you're nervous to meet someone, you're not the alpha. We've all had the experience where we can sense that someone's nervous to meet us. You're the alpha, right? And when we assess that someone is alpha to us, we voluntarily step back and allow our alphas to eat first. So alphas in a group are given first choice of meat and first choice of mate. And though we may not get the best cut of meat, we get to eat eventually, and we didn't get an elbow in the face. This is a good system, right? And to this current day, we're very comfortable with the system. We are very comfortable with our alphas being given preferential treatment. There's not a single person in this room that has any problem with someone more senior than you in your organization having a higher salary than you. It doesn't bother us at all, right? You may think they're an idiot, but it doesn't actually bother you that they make more money because they are more senior. It doesn't bother us that someone more senior in the organization has a better parking space or a bigger office. In fact, the funny thing is sometimes we actually come to expect it. Can you imagine if the President of the United States had to carry his own luggage? We'd be incensed. We can't find someone to find his luggage. To carry his luggage. He's the president, for heaven's sakes. I will do it. It would be an honor. And we actually found ourselves volunteering happily to do quite menial labor for our alphas. In other words, we're proud. We're proud to work for those who we perceive as our leaders, as our alphas. And this is one of the reasons we all like to appear strong, and this is why men walk around like this in bars, because they want to be perceived as the alpha. Right? It looks attractive, right? And it comes with certain benefits. People call you sir and ma'am, and they hold doors open for you and, bring you tea or coffee without you even asking. It's good to be the king. But this is the rub now. This is the rub. None of that stuff comes for free. None of that stuff comes for free. You see, we as the group are not stupid. Though the leader may have authority over any one of us as individuals, they work for the group. And this is why dictators are afraid of the people. This is why dictators have fake elections, to give the appearance of legitimacy from the people. This is why dictators keep the people divided. The more you keep the people divided at each other's throats, you're safe, because we have power over the individuals, but we fear the people. I'll give you a quick aside that made me realize this so starkly. Dictators keep the people away from them. I was walking down the street. I was walking down Pennsylvania Avenue with a Palestinian, and we walked past the White House, and we were standing at the fence, and he says, "That's the White House." I went, "Yeah." He goes, "The President of the United States lives there." I'm like, "Yeah, it's the White House, He's like, "No, right there." I'm like, "It's the White House, right?" And what I realized, what he was saying to me is, there's no visible or overbearing security. We know it's secure, but there's no razor wire. There's no guys walking around with submachine guns. There's no signs that say shoot to kill. In other words, in a democracy, we trust our leaders and our leaders trust us. They actually allow us to come up to their homes. This is a big deal. In a dictatorship, you keep the people miles and miles away, and you have huge roadblocks and guys with machine guns and curfews and things like that. Dictators fear the people. This is the point. The people have the power. The people always have the power. And that's why I say that all of the perks of leadership do not come for free. We as the group expect, there's a social contract, that when danger threatens the tribe, that it is that alpha, that is that leader that will rush towards the danger to protect us. That's why we gave you the first choice of meat and mate, because you're naturally stronger or smarter. And so if you're better fed and you've got more self-confidence and, you are naturally stronger, we want you to rush towards the danger. That's why we gave you first choice of mate, because you might die first. We want to keep your genes in the gene pool. Not stupid, right? And so for the leader that refuses to accept their responsibility, this is what we find abhorrent, and this is what we find viscerally offensive. This is why we find the exorbitant salaries or bonus structures of some of the bankers so offensive. It's not the numbers. It's that they have violated the very definition of what it means to be a leader. We know that they allowed their people to be sacrificed for them to keep their perks. Worse, we know that they sacrificed their people to keep those perks. And this is what we find so offensive. If I told you we're going to give a $150 million bonus to Nelson Mandela, anybody got a problem with that? Nope. How about $250 million to Mother Teresa? Like, we're actually okay with that. We're okay with it because it's not the amount of money, it's not the numbers, it's not that we're fine with our alphas being given preferential treatment and perks and we're fine with it if they uphold the responsibility of leadership. And this is the very point of leadership. It has nothing to do with rank. It is a responsibility. I know many people who sit at the highest echelons of an organization, and though they have authority, they are not leaders. We do as they tell us because they have authority over us, but we would not follow them. And I know many people who sit at the lowest levels of organizations who have no authority, and yet they have made the choice to look after the person to the left of them and look after the person to the right of them. And this is what it takes to be a leader. It is unbelievably hard work. It comes with tremendous amounts of sacrifice. It's not something you do at work and then you don't do it at home. You're either in or you're out. It's not for everyone. It is a difficult choice. As we make our way up the ranks of leadership and we choose to be leaders rather than simply authorities, if we choose to be leaders, it's not something that we just do and then go home and then we turn it off. It's not a decision. It's not an event. It's a daily practice. It's like parenting, that we take care of those in our charge and would choose to sacrifice the things that we value, the things that we want, the things that we need so that they may survive. I sat down with Lieutenant General George Flynn of the United States Marine Corps and asked him, what is it that makes the Marines so good at what they do? And he replied simply, officers eat last. Now, if you go to any chow hall on any Marine base anywhere in the world, at chow time, what you will see is they will line up in rank order. The most junior Marine eats first, the most senior Marine eats last. Always. No one tells them they have to, and it's not in any rule book. It's because of the way they view leadership. They don't view it as a rank, they view it as a responsibility. It's the responsibility to take care of those in your charge. So, true story. There was a group of Marines that were deployed, and it was time to eat, and as is the custom, the officer ate last. Except on this particular day, they ran out of food. No food left for the officer. They went back out into the field, and one by one, all of his men brought him some of their food. And this is really the secret to great leadership. Officers never go hungry, ever. And this is the point. Leadership is about risk. It's the risk of trust. It's the risk to speak out. It's the risk to tell the truth. A leader would never say, well, you prove to me why I should trust you. If you're in my team, you get my trust. This is what happens. This is what leaders do. And because they're willing to take that risk, because they're the ones willing to stick their neck out on the line, to tell the truth, to do what's right, to protect the weak, sometimes it means costing their lives at the most extreme, but at least their perks or their interests at the minimum. We naturally, as human beings, reward that kind of risk, reward that kind of behavior with love and loyalty and the desire to offer our blood and sweat and tears to see that that leader's vision comes to life. In fact, it makes us proud to work hard to see that vision brought to life. What we have today, the epidemic that we have today, is a distinct lack of courage to take that risk. I see it in big business, I see it in small businesses, I see it in public companies, I see it in private companies, I see it in government, I see it in politics. What we have are people who are too damn afraid of losing their jobs, or too damn afraid of losing their positions, or too damn afraid of losing a little bit of money, and by the way, they have more than they need, right? So that others may benefit. And this is not a political point of view. This is a biological and anthropological point of view. I find it hilarious, absolutely laughable, that our members of Congress would indict leaders of business for putting their profits before their people, and yet these same members of Congress put their elections, put their own successes before their own people. I had a meeting in Congress, And there was a bunch of congressmen sitting around the table. And I started the meeting. I said, okay, why do you want me here? And they said, today or in general? And I said, both. And they said, well, today we'd like you to talk to us about leadership and how we can be better leaders. I said, I can do that, not a problem. And I said, what about in general? They said, we'd like your help with our agenda. I said, okay. I said, how candid would you like me to be? They said, very. I said, okay. The fact that you used the word agenda proves to me that you don't care about the people you represent, but you care about yourselves. If you talked about needing help with your vision, I'm in. If you talked about needing help with how to lead, how to bring the country together, what to do, I'm in. The mere fact that you said agenda is a selfish disposition. It means you care more about yourselves than you do about the people out there. Now, the good news is we're having the meeting. The good news is there are good people in our government who are working very hard to try and see it through this morass. But the problem is there is this morass. The amazing thing is it's not an old thing. It's a relatively recent thing. You talk to any seasoned politician, Republican, Democrat, it doesn't matter. They will tell you that it used to be more functional. It absolutely used to be more functional. It's not just perception. It actually is worse than it used to be. You talk to any seasoned businessman and they'll tell you it's different. The pressures are different. It's much harder to run a public company, for example, today than it used to be. And the reason is this overwhelming push to be more selfish. There are many things that have happened. It was nobody's fault. There was sort of byproducts of decisions made long ago, but we are currently experiencing the side effects of some very ill-conceived decisions that were made in the 80s and 90s. Understand that leadership is like exercise. You can't measure it on a daily basis. I could tell you to go to the gym and you'll go, and you'll come back home and you'll look in the mirror and you will see nothing. And you'll go the next day, because I made a compelling argument, and you'll come back and you'll look in the mirror and you will see nothing. Worse, you're in pain, right? So empirically speaking, you're seeing no benefit or result from the effort you're putting in, and you're hurting. And so it's a very good reason to stop. And so we cannot measure leadership on a daily basis. However, if you were to look at a photograph of yourself from 3 months prior, you can't believe your body ever looked like that. In other words, it builds up, it's cumulative. And parenting is exactly the same. You can't measure whether someone's a good parent or bad parent on a daily basis. If we were measured on a daily basis, we would all have our children taken away from us, right? You measure parenting over the course of time. And it's the cumulative effect of the good parent, even if they have bad days, that makes for great kids. It is the cumulative effect of great leadership that makes for great organizations. And likewise, bad leadership can also not be measured on a daily basis. In other words, we can't actually tell if somebody's a good leader or a bad leader until some time later when the organization is broken or there's massive mistrust inside the organization. Any organization in which there's a general culture of people sending CYA emails is proof that they're afraid of each other, right? Any organization where people keep folders about all the things they've done, so if anything happens, they can bring it out to HR and show, okay, this is proof that they don't trust each other. They're expending time and energy to protect themselves from each other, which inherently means they're taking time and energy away from protecting the organization from the dangers outside or seizing the opportunities outside. In other words, we go to work afraid. This is what work-life balance is, by the way. It has nothing to do with how much yoga you do, right? What work-life balance means is I feel safe at home, but I don't feel safe at work. And the reason we don't feel safe at work is because we work in organizations, by and large, that our leaders would not sacrifice the numbers to save us. They would rather sacrifice us to save the numbers. This is the world we live in. It is pervasive. It is cancerous. And my argument, it is the reason for most of the things we're suffering today. Our economic decline, our political struggles, our feeling. I mean, think about it. We don't even trust that our government's looking out for us. We have trust issues. Oh, all of my ex-girlfriends would hear me talking now. I could just blame society. we have trust issues. And so what we are doing, and this is the hard part, this is the responsibility part. What we're doing is standing on the sidelines and saying, it's the corporations, it's the CEOs. We always put a "the" before things we don't like, you know? Corporations are fine, but the corporations, right? It's the politicians, right? We're standing on the sidelines and we're blaming all of the people in the failed leadership. And yet, I believe we bear some of the responsibility. The thing that I find remarkable about how societies move, and I'm particularly fascinated by social movements, is they happen not by appealing to the majority. There's something called the law of diffusion of innovations, where you actually only need 15 to 18% of a market, of a population, for the phenomenon of the tipping point to take place and for ideas to take hold. And we don't need to preach to the majority. We need to find the people who believe what we believe. And we need to take the very, very hard decisions to run our organizations the way a leader should run an organization. And if we're in the middle of an organization, that we demand that we feel safe. That doesn't mean that you have to do everything for us. That doesn't mean you have to coddle us. It makes us, but we want to feel that we can take risks and not feel that we're going to lose our jobs, which, by the way, is the root of innovation. Innovation requires experimentation, which requires failure. I love talking to CEOs, and I ask them, what are their priorities? And they tell me innovation and efficiency. Impossible. Pick one. Innovation is inherently inefficient. Pick one. You can have them alternatively, but you can't have both, right? Because it's about experimentation and failure, There was an article in The Economist. You know, they do those special sections that are as long as the magazine. And it was about the decline of innovation in the world. And it made this remarkable, compelling argument about the decline of innovation, and it counted all kinds of factors. Fewer patents filed, and the ones that are filed are not that special. Truly earth-changing or industry-changing ideas. And they made a very, very compelling argument. And then they attempted to explain why. And they went through any number of factors: globalization, the internet, economic meltdown, all the rest of it, all of it. And there was not a single word devoted to the human being. Who's coming up with all the ideas? People. Human beings. Not a single word that said the reason that we have a decline of innovation today is because people are not coming up with ideas. Well, why aren't they coming up with ideas? Because they're too busy protecting themselves from each other. I saw it play out in sort of a fascinating way. I was flying somewhere, and I was boarding an airline, and there was a guy who attempted to board before his group number was called, which I believe is a federal offense. And the gate agent treated him as such. Berated him. Sir, wait over there. It is not your turn yet. You stand over there. I mean, it was sort of remarkable. And so I spoke up. I said, why do you have to talk to us that way? Why can't you talk to us like human beings? Why don't you treat us nicely? I said. And this is exactly what I was told. She looked at me and said, sir, if I don't follow the rules, I could get in trouble or lose my job. All she told me was that I do not feel safe in my own job. All she told me is that I don't trust my leaders because my leaders don't trust me. That's all she revealed to me. The reason we like flying Southwest Airlines is not because they have some miracle formula to hire nice people. It's because their people don't fear their leaders. Their people feel safe amongst each other. And guess who are the lucky recipients? Us. Because they're not spending time and energy protecting themselves from each other. They give that energy to us. We have so much bad stuff going on because they're too worried about each other. And so it is our responsibility to demand that our leaders give us what we want, which is we want to come to work and feel safe, just like we want to roam the streets and feel safe. That's all we want, right? We have to demand it. Market rules, right? If we are the leaders, we must take the risks. We must give this a try. We have to lead as leaders are expected to lead, to look after our people, to let them eat first, like any good parent would let their children eat first, to sacrifice what is ours when it counts, when it matters, when danger threatens, to see that our people are kept safe. I get asked the question a lot. What happens if you're in the middle of the organization, you want to do this, but you have no access to the senior levels and they don't get it. And the answer is you ignore the senior levels. You have no control over the senior levels. You can't tell them what to do. However, every single one of us has the capacity to show up to work every day and consider the person to the left of us and consider the person to the right of us. No matter where we sit in the organization, we can choose to be the leader we wish we had and make sure that the people with whom we work, the people whose faces we know and names we know, that they are taken care of, that someone is looking out for them, that we are working to see that they love coming to work every day, that they feel safe. And sometimes that may mean that we will get in trouble for standing up for them. We may even lose our jobs. This is fraught with risk, but it's necessary. It's highly necessary. We have to be the leaders we wish we had. Otherwise, nothing changes. It gets worse. It gets worse because we have amazing momentum here. The clue that I look to, strangely enough, is Alcoholics Anonymous. Alcoholics Anonymous offers us a roadmap how to fix our leadership problem. We've all heard of the 12-step program. Step number 1, admit you have a problem. Okay, we got to start there. There's something rotten in Denmark here, right? But it's the 12th step. Alcoholics Anonymous has successfully been helping alcoholics beat this disease for 75, 80 years. And they know that if you master all 11 steps, but not the 12th, you will start drinking again probably. But if you master the 12th step, you will beat the disease. So what's the 12th step? The 12th step is the commitment to help another alcoholic. Service. Always service. There's no such thing as alcoholicsanonymous.org. It doesn't happen online. It's a human experience. It happens in church basements and rec centers. It never happens over email, and it never happens over text. It happens in person, and it happens over the phone. It is the sacrifice of our time and energy to help someone who is suffering with what we are suffering with. We have an entire section in our bookshop called Self-Help. We have no section in our bookshop called Help Others. Right? We're all so preoccupied with how can I find happiness? How can I find the job I love? How can I lose 10 pounds? That we've literally forgotten to notice that the person standing right next to us is suffering. And if we choose to help the people who are suffering with the things that we hope to overcome, guess what happens? We get healed. This is what Alcoholics Anonymous has proved to us. And when they talk about God in their other steps, it's not necessarily God, it's faith, it's belief. Belief in something, a vision. This is what our leaders need to be setting for us. Something to believe in. Something worth fighting for. Something that we would bear any burden and pay any price. And right now, no one's offering us any of that. Absent a clear sense of vision, a clear cause, a clear purpose, a clear belief. Absent an environment in which we naturally feel safe amongst the people with whom we live or amongst the people with whom we work. The natural human response is cynicism, mistrust, paranoia, and self-interest. We are also such cowards. We all refuse to lead because we still have to worry about ourselves. And this is why I look to these remarkable men and women in uniform. Just 3 days ago, there was a soldier who was awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor for bravery and heroism. If you haven't heard the story yet, his unit, it was a small unit, came under severe attack, heavy attack, rocket-propelled grenades, you name it. It was thrown upon them. And it was so sudden and so shocking that every single soldier in the unit was injured, simultaneously, hurt. And this one soldier with severe wounds, shrapnel in his arm with severe bleeding coming out of one of his arms, shrapnel in his legs with severe bleeding coming out of his legs, chose to take post, man a machine gun, repel the enemy, pull pins on his grenades and wait and count so that when he threw his grenades, they couldn't throw them back, called in an airstrike, and single-handedly repelled the attack. He thought, he was convinced he was going to die. And he made the choice in his final moments, instead of lying there and waiting to die, that he would take up arms alone to protect the people he loves. And if you ask any of these heroes, any of them, why did you do it? They all say the same thing, because they would have done it for me. Officers never go hungry. Thank you very much.